Evening, everyone. My name is Edward Tannenbaum. I'm the interim president at Park East Synagogue. Thank you for joining. As far as I'm concerned, this is a must-see event, and I'm really happy to see so many of you here. You obviously agree. About 3 weeks ago, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, three of our esteemed members from the synagogue, Phil Weisberg, Rabbi Kahane, and Ellie Cohanim, went on a mission to Israel on behalf of Park East Synagogue, which is a terrific representation of our synagogue there. One of the purposes of the trip, obviously, was to document the incredible devastation, the human devastation, the property devastation that came about on October 7 as a result of the Hamas attacks. Terrible situation. But at the same time, the video that you'll see tonight does also document the unity and the solidarity of the Jewish people and of the Israelis in particular. So the video presentation tonight will offer up some very sad moments, but it will also document the strength of the Jewish people. Am Yisrael Chai. So with that, I'll turn it over to Reuven.
I spoke here 3 weeks ago on Shabbat, and I dedicated that speech to somebody who was engaged to my cousin named Kfir Franco. And I always think at any event you should always dedicate something or say something in honor, whether it's a hostage or somebody who was lost, because then it makes it personal. Otherwise, we just put numbers to something. 1,400 passed away, 115 soldiers, 150 hostages, 250 hostages. So I think it's always important for each one of us, even tonight, to put a name, to put a face to someone, to something. And for me, let me recount the story that happened to me. And it was, we spent Shabbat together, Phil, I, and someone named Dusty Eber from Dallas, who we came together. And after Shabbat, it really started for us, this mission. And it was Sunday, and we went to something called Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. And I was just standing there with Dusty. Phil was in the tent, I think visiting some other hostage families. And someone just came over to me and said, "Are you from America?" I said, "Yes." "Where are you from?" "New York." My friend was from Dallas. He looked at the kippah. He said, "Are you religious?" I said, "Sort of." And the two people said, "We're from Keren HaYesod, Keren HaKayemet." It's a big Jewish organization. And at that moment, it seemed to be like they were soliciting, and I was really ready to say, "How much money do you want? Like, is this, are you looking for a check or something like that?" It was very weird, the kind of questions, and they weren't being direct. And then one of them said, "Would you do us a kind deed?" And the other one said, "Would you do us a favor? And would you light a candle, the fourth candle for Hanukkah?" Hanukkah had not started yet, but they said, "Would you light the fourth candle? Because what we do is, we at Keren HaYesod light the 8 candles before for our videos, and one night is with the American Jews, and one night is with the European Jews, and one night we do with the evangelicals, and one night we do with the soldiers, and each night we do with a different hostage." And I said, "Sure, I'll do it." And before I could even look up, they put me at a table with a Chanukiah, and then they handed me the candle, and out of nowhere came Esther and Nufar Bukstab. And that's the mom, and that is the sister of Yagev. And at that moment, everything became personal for me. You know, when I sat here in America, as we do, we look on television and we see the posters. And I saw the poster of this Yagev probably 20 times on 68th Street, on 69th Street, on 75th Street. He's 34, he's a musician. And then they said, "Start making the blessing." And I said the Asher Kedeshanu V'Tzatav V'Tzivanu Lahadik Ner Shel Chanukah. And as I was saying it, and I'm an emotional person, I said, "This is the one time I can't cry, because I have to give this mother who's been waiting for her son." At that point, it was, I think, 60 days or 55 days. She's waiting for her son to come home, and the sister is waiting for her brother to come home. And I was lighting the candle by myself, and then I took her hand. And when we were holding hands together, everything to me became personal. And October 7th really became personal. It wasn't a television anymore. It was holding somebody's hand, and it was holding it right there in front of the Chanukiah, the menorah. And I think, you know, she looked at it as a miracle, that it will be a miracle that her son will come home soon. And so for Yagev, that's who I dedicate personally this evening. We were going on the mission, Phil, I, and Dusty, and that was with Park East, and it is with Park East, and we were also doing it with WZO, the World Zionist Organization, the oldest organization for Israel, started by Herzl himself. And we went there, and I have to thank Cantor Benny for making that introduction. And I want to also thank you, Cantor, for organizing tonight in a week that the Cantor organized. I think it was the 5th great concert of this year. Every year he does the 5 best concerts. And again, he did it on Sunday night, a great concert. Thank you so much, Benny. And the person who he made the connection at the WZO called Benny and he said, you sent me some interesting people. Ellie he had known before, and he said, you sent me, and he sent Phil. And what kind of synagogue do you have? You have a synagogue of opposites. Reuven's sitting in the back of this bus the whole time. He doesn't shut his mouth for a second. He's loud. If it wasn't, you know, some kind of sad thing that's going on in Israel, the bus seemed for him like a bar mitzvah bus. And Phil was there in front, and he was sort of a little serious. He's a serious person. And he was taking notes, and he was taking video. But the truth about Phil is he has a great smile, and he's always smiling. But he is serious about serious things. And this was very serious. And on this trip, he was a videographer, a stenographer, a historian. But most of all, I think, Phil, you were a storyteller. And the story you have to tell is about the people who experienced what happened on October 7th, who they didn't have the words, and they don't have the words to describe what happened to them. But just as much, it's about the people who were with those people who experienced it and the people who met those people. And it's the people like us who are on that group and the people like you who don't know how to react and who don't know how to act and who don't know how to feel and who don't know what to do. And I think, Phil, you, with this video and what you've done tonight, is exactly what we have to do. Because you have a video which brings us to the past. And we always talk about Yom HaShoah and Tisha B'Av, but that's too far in the past. But we always have to remember the immediate past. The world has already forgot October 7th. They forgot about it. But we have to keep it in our immediate memory, and that's what you've done with this video. What you've done more is you've brought everyone together. And that is the only thing that will make us move forward. That when you come together and you belong together, you have the nechama, you have the comfort of being with each other, and you have the achdus, and you have the strength to move forward. And when you move forward, you can hear those words of Hanukkah, of Sason and Simcha, maybe a little bit of joy and happiness, and most of all, Shalom b'mehimar b'yameinu, that we will once and for all have peace forever for Israel. And with that, I let Phil start the presentation.
So, just before we start, I want to let you know, I don't want to speak a lot, which is difficult for me because I like to talk. I think it's best you hear the words of the people that we visited, but we will try to have time after for questions. And I would just say, I really give Reuven a lot of credit because he reached out to a bunch of us and said, we really should go. And I think a lot of people were tenuous. We were dealing with our better halves who were saying, you're not going. And somehow a few of us managed to go. We originally, some of us intended to go with spouses, and it was decided, no, 2 of you can't be here at the same time, go separately. So it was a really wonderful thing that Reuven did, and I want to tell you, before I went, I was really depressed. And I thought going to Israel, maybe I'd be more depressed. And you see on the slide, that's a picture in the upper right-hand corner of the breakfast buffet at David Citadel. Anybody who's gone to any of these hotels in Jerusalem know it never looks like that. There weren't a lot of us there. The ceasefire just ended, but what my message to all of you is don't let it look like that. If you're even debating whether to go or not, I promise you it's safe, and I promise you they will appreciate it, and I promise you you will return and you will have a lot of confidence in the Jewish people. Reuven arranged the first Shabbat. It was really fantastic. You can see we spent Kabbalat Shabbat with a young couple, Dusty's son and daughter-in-law, and there were other family members there overlooking the Knesset, and it was wonderful. After, when we were in Shul, one of the first things I noticed was, the soldiers were in Shul. And they weren't religious soldiers, and it was in a pretty religious shul. But the place where they sat was right in the front of the shul, and they were the most honored people, deservingly so, to be there. I think the second observation was on the way home. We were walking home, and we heard a pretty loud boom, right? That was a rocket that was intended for Yerushalayim that went to Beit Lechem and was intercepted, but it wasn't louder than the kids who were playing in the streets in Jerusalem, which had no cars, right? And the locals really didn't flinch. They went on with their lives, and I think that also was part of the problem because they'd just gotten used to rockets, which is really no way to live. Ellie Cohanim had to be in Washington today, so she sends her apologies, but she sent me this video, and she has some very astute observations, so I think it's best you hear those.
Hi friends, this is Ellie Cohanim. I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you tonight. I'm just sharing a quick video message. Just got back from this mission with World Zionist Organization to Israel. I was stunned to understand the amount of need there is in Israel, which is unprecedented right now. Everywhere we turned our heads, we saw Israelis just in need. Israeli society is reeling right now. Everything from 300,000 Israelis that are internally displaced, people who have been evacuated from the south and from the north for fear of the threat from Lebanon and Hezbollah, to victims' families, hostage families, to Israelis soldiers who have fallen in combat, to soldiers and others who are in need of physical rehabilitation because there's thousands of people who are injured right now, families who have lost their head of household, entire sectors of the economy that are just, I don't want to sound exaggerated, but really on the verge of collapse because there's so many people who are not working right now and who are serving in the army. So there's many sectors of the economy that are suffering right now, including farming. And the list goes on. We visited a military base where they told us that even the IDF has needs. I think all of us have been hearing about things like tactical gear that they're low on because this is the biggest reserve call-up ever in Israel's history, to one base that we visited where they need dorm rooms because there's literally no room for the soldiers and their families to sleep, they tell us, because again, this is an unprecedentedly large call-up of soldiers and a more extensive time in battle than in previous efforts for a long time now. So I just want to encourage everyone to do everything that you can do. And I was asked to talk a bit about what it is we can all do. Well, first of all, I think we need to give until it hurts. As much as we've been giving, we need to give more. Second, I think we need to be lobbying our members of Congress, the White House, and every elected official we have access to give Israel the time and space she needs to fight this war until they've eliminated Hamas and taken on any other adversaries that they need to take on right now. And third, to combat the anti-Semitism that we're experiencing at home right now. What I've seen has been so effective are the efforts of people like Bill Ackman. And specifically, I want to share how certain law firms have rescinded offers to students that have histories documented of engaging in anti-Semitism. But also, maybe even more importantly, are the law firms that have notified Harvard that they're no longer recruiting on their campuses. So I really want to ask everyone who has any amount of hiring power get in touch with the universities, get in touch with any potential places where you would hire employees, and let them know that if the university is not going to secure its Jewish students, you're not going to hire from them. And again, anyone who has any hiring power, I encourage you to do as much as you can on this issue. Thank you again.
Okay. Just before we get into all the videos, we got a lot to go through. So this is the agenda. And again, if something's uncomfortable, I'm going to play it. I promise there's no violence or blood or anything in these videos, but the stories are difficult. It's understandable if you don't want to sit through it or it's problematic. Please, feel free to take a breather outside. I won't be offended in any way. So we did, thanks to Reuven, speak with Moshe Yalon. This was a few weeks ago, and he was the former chief of staff for the IDF. And his views were this isn't going to be a very long war. He thought it would be weeks and not months. And I think the other thing that he said, which was relevant, is there isn't really a great partner to administer Gaza. The IDF was prepared to deal with whoever is there, but they need military control of the area. So, we're going to hear a lot about what party it is. They're going to be a two-state solution. I mean, this is one person's view. He's no longer in the government, but his perspective was the most important thing is that there's military control of the area because Israel can't live with these neighbors without military control. Reuven, okay. So this is Hostage Square. This is the scene that Reuven talked about. It was the first event that WZO organized for us. And I would just say, you see the pictures on TV. It's big. It's sad. There are family representatives there. There are representatives from the kibbutzim. I have some pictures of Kibbutz Be'eri. We're going to hear from some people who were there. My sister was on that kibbutz in 1971. And, today I read a story about that kibbutz. They are in the Dead Sea Hotel, and they served the meal to all of the people who were at the hotel. And when I told my sister that story, she said, that's who these people are. But they're dealing with, just really terrible, terrible things. So Reuven was right. It was day 57 when we were there. It's a countdown, and they're very moving displays, but the family representatives are there, right? So if you go to Israel, you will meet people, and you will, as Reuven did. This is the menorah lighting.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קדשנו וציווה וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה.
אז אנחנו רוצים להדליק את הנר הזה לכבוד כל החטופים ששוחררו ושנמצאים שם, לכבוד יגב, אחי הגדול, ולכבוד רימון. אנחנו רוצים את כל החטופים בבית. ואנחנו נאחל שזה יהיה בקרוב ושיחזרו כמה שיותר מהר.
אמן, 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 ושיקרה לנו ניסים.
And then right after that, we had a heart-to-heart discussion with two family representatives. I didn't video that because I wasn't sure that it was appropriate or we had permission to do it. One of the representatives, her brother was a bartender at Nova. Lubinov is the name. And most of his friends got out. One hid in the bushes. 3 were able to go out in a car. He went back to help people And to my knowledge, he's still there. The other representative was from the Bibas family. I'm sure you've all heard about them. And, I think the most relevant conversation was when somebody asked her, how do you get through the day? She said, I put my makeup on every day and I fake it because I have to be there for that family. But inside, and you could feel it in the room, these people are really being torn apart. And it's not a normal hostage situation. The media is being manipulated. It's very, very tough for these families. And, you can see the posters, but I encourage people, go talk to these folks. We've had some representatives in Park East that Cantor Benny has represented, has done events for and outreach for, and it's really an impossible situation with these people. Now, what was interesting is the CEO, the Israeli CEO of Publicis, has been put on this case full time since October 7th. She's running the campaign. It's the largest media campaign in Israel's history. And the chairman of Group Publicis has spoken at Park East. So what they did is, this space is Publicis space in Israel, and they are managing the media campaign, and they're running it like a campaign. What really struck me is, and it never occurred to me with the hostages, it never says they're Israeli, and it never says they're Jewish. And that's a distinct, intentional marketing decision. But think about the world we're living in, where we can't say they're Jewish Israeli hostages, or they won't be treated like other hostages. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. The next stop was to the Kiryat, which is it's like the Pentagon in Israel. And we met with the people that are doing all the interviews that you see on every media channel. And you can see in this picture, there's the picture of where they do the interviews, and right next to it is a room where they have a representative from every agency, every government ministry in Israel, so that when they have to respond to a question, they can just go around the table. These people have been working like 18-hour days since the beginning. It's really a full-time job. And, some of the statistics, for those of you who aren't trolling the internet or may not be aware, there's 50 times as many pro-Palestinian media tweets. 50 times. They're absolutely convinced that this is being amplified by state sponsors of terrorism with bots. It's a big deal. And if you think nobody pays attention to the internet, well, maybe in this room we don't, and we watch traditional media, but look at some of the statistics. The 18 to 29 segment, 20% think the Holocaust is a myth. 20%, 1 in 5. Think about those statistics, a myth, right? Here's some other statistics. How many people think Jews are oppressors? In the 18 to 24 segment, 2/3. 2/3. It's the majority of people, right? The majority of people. And where is all of this funding coming from? In case you didn't realize, Qatar has spent, this was as of 2019, in the previous decade, $2.7 billion on university programs. $2.7 billion. So when you think about somebody pulling a $10 million donation, and how can the head of Harvard not pay attention to that? Well, there's a lot of oil money flowing in their direction that's more than happy to pick up the difference, right? This is what we're dealing with. And the current crop of students, I don't know if you guys saw this Wall Street Journal article, which was put out by a professor at Berkeley, where he polled people, right? They can't name the river, they can't name the sea, they don't know what they're talking about. And it's clear that there has been no factual education where they can make an informed decision. Now, even with a factual education, there are going to be some people who are going to side with the Palestinians, right? No one, including every Israeli official I spoke to, wants what's going on in Gaza to have the human toll that it has, right? And we're sacrificing our own soldiers for this. Despite all of that, we have a segment of the population, 18 to 35, that get their news and information and facts from social media, which are all manipulated. So one of the goals of doing this exercise is that everybody here is a mouthpiece. We all talk to these people. Don't assume they've ever read a book or a reference. They get their news from social media, and a lot of it is manipulated. There's really, really, I think, some key messages. We got a little bit of a refresher at Aish HaTorah. This Rabbi Dov Cohen, very interesting background. But what was also interesting is we spoke with Jamie Geller, who runs the social media and marketing campaigns for Aish. She's amazing. And if you want to think about how to battle this, she put together a bunch of tips. So when you put your message out in social media, it's not censored. Like this is what we have to do. This is where the hearts and minds are being won. It's on social media, right? And if fun things that do this, fun things that refute all of the lies and the myths, and pay attention when they tell you social media is manipulated, it is manipulated. We went to Har Herzl. I got to tell you, on this trip, I really appreciate Herzl because I feel personally under attack, especially 1 block away from Hunter College, listening to Free Palestine from the river to the sea in my home continuously on a daily basis. Herzl was a genius. But while we were taking this picture, Ben from Brooklyn pointed out, we heard helicopters in the background. There's no joyrides in helicopters ferrying business people around. Those helicopters were ferrying wounded soldiers to Hadassah Hospital. And you could hear it. These are the sounds in Israel. We visited the National Memorial Hall. For those of you who haven't been, 25,000 soldiers are memorialized there. You can see in the picture, starting at the beginning, in the 1880s. That's where the wall starts. Interesting, fun fact, these are made from the same materials as the Merkava tank. That's the material of all of these. Each panel is unique in size and shape, as was each soldier. And the people who designed the Merkava tank did the engineering for the construction of the building. But we were there because each day they celebrate the yard sites of the fallen soldiers that day. And that's the ceremony that you see taking place there. And while we were there, on the left side, you see a picture of all the people that had fallen in just this most recent event. So we were thinking Simchas Torah next year, this is going to be a pretty full place as these people have the yahrzeit. It's just very sad. I think the only competing day for this is the beginning of the Yom Kippur War. A lot of people perished. The picture is a family. Avraham Ashkenaz. The person speaking was his sister. You can see his kids They never knew what he did until he died, because he was in special forces, so he couldn't talk about it. The father couldn't talk. It was their shloshim. Every one of these bricks is another story like that, and there's more of them since we visited. So this is a very, very painful war for Israel. We then went to Hadassah Hospital, where they're rehabilitating some of the victims, both soldiers and people from the kibbutzim who were impacted. So we're going to hear the story, the video of two people who are being rehabilitated. The first is from Barry.
Wounded patients for surgical procedures. As Dr. Elram mentioned, right now the priority, both on a national level, because there was already a shortage in rehabilitation space in Jerusalem and in Israel generally. Right now we're focusing all our efforts to expedite the completion of a new rehabilitation center that thankfully we've been building for almost 5 years now. With us is also Sagi. תודה רבה שהצטרפת. לא יודע אם אתה מעדיף עברית או אנגלית או... English is fine. So, Sagi, please.
My name is Sagi Shifroni. I'm 41 years old. I live in Be'eri. A wife and 2 kids. A very big family in Be'eri. Before I go to my personal story, I want to thank you for inviting me. And it's not every day that a patient meets the head of the facility, so what you do in rehabilitation is amazing, and thank you for that, and thank you for inviting me. And the second thing I want to say before, because I see a lot of cameras and media, is to remind us, all of us, that I still have friends in Gaza kidnapped from their beds that Saturday. And if anyone here has any kind of influence, we must bring them back home. Some of them already dead, we must bring them as well. Some of them returned safely, and we thank for that, but we must not forget and use all the efforts, and this is what I'm saying here now. We have to bring them back home. As for me, I was at my house with my family, with my wife and my 5-year-old daughter. My son was sleeping at my father's house when the bombing started. And as we woke up from the bombing, my wife got in the car and drove the other side of the kibbutz to be with my older son, 8-year-old boy. And since then we passed that day split, apart, having contact through the cell phone, but not being together. And at some point I realized that this bombing is very unusual in its massive, in its very intense, and I go and I lock the door of the mamad, of the shelter room. I disassemble the handle, so it's not really lockable, but you can disassemble. I could disassemble the handle. So it's me and my daughter inside the shelter room when terrorists broke the window and came in at around 10:30. He started massive shooting at the door, tried to knock it down. The door stood still, but when they left, they burned down the house with us inside it. And at some point I realized that I can't stay. I have my daughter under the bed. I was under the bed as well. we can't stay. Smoke is coming in, and we have to go out. We have to rescue ourselves. I was SMSing anybody I knew at that point, but there was no help on the way. And I understand that we have to act for ourselves. And I decided to go out of the window because the house is already on fire. And I wrapped my daughter in a blanket and went out through my balcony, which was also on fire. That's where the burns are from. And I escaped. I saved our lives. And I crossed the kibbutz on a bicycle. I could not run because of the feet. I could not run. They find bicycle, and I put my girl in the child seat and drove about 1 kilometer away to the other side of the kibbutz. And my daughter is pointing out where she sees something suspicious, where she saw terrorists along the way, and she told me. And I told her later that she rescued me as much as I rescued her. And we were really a team. And we arrived to my father's house. I called my wife. She let us in, of course. And about an hour later, it was around 12. About an hour later, the terrorists arrived also to that point to that area of the kibbutz. He broke again into the house. I think I'm the only one that terrorists broke in his house twice in the same day. It was really bad luck. And luckily they didn't try to enter the second shelter room. They just shot the door a few shots and left I don't know, some kind of gunfight started, but from the house outwards, and they did not care about us anymore, and they left us waiting. It was my brother and his wife, with 2 kids and a dog, and my wife and I with 2 kids, all in the same small shelter room. And time passes by, and we still wait for rescue. We waited about 12 hours until the IDF knocked the door, and after a short conversation to clarify that they're really who they say they are, we opened the door and got rescued. I was taken to Soroka at first, and then I've been in Soroka for 3 days, hospitalized, and then in Karem for another 2 weeks for taking care of the burns. And now I'm at rehabilitation here at Ofakim. And that's pretty much in a nutshell my story. I feel here very atuf, surrounded with not only physiotherapy, also psychological, and any aspect of the rehabilitation is being taken care of. And it's really good. It's really amazing platform to get ready to the new life that we have to now build.
I'm just going to move to the next story.
My commanders call us and send a message that we need to come from home to police station. It was in 6:35 in the morning. and I get out from my home in 6:45, something like that. When I get out from my home, like 3 minutes driving in my car, in my private car, I saw a street. The street is
abundant.
And like apocalypse, the cars against the way, without people. The doors is open. I think in the same point, I think to myself it was azaka, muscles, rockets on my head or something, or they crushed and people need help, but I don't see nothing. And when I look forward, I saw 7 or 8 people who like they was with the IDF uniform like that, but the weapon they have, it was a Kalashnikov, and in this moment I understand it is terrorist. Behind me come another man, and he say to me, you need to pass. He also from the
Security forces.
And I say to him, it's not pass. I don't allow that. And he get in his car, and I go to my car. And when we sit inside the car, the terrorists saw us and start to shoot us. I have with them a little battle gun, with my pistol alone, with 14 bullets. I fight with them. The another man who was behind me come to my car and say to me he's injured. And he say to me to drive. The terrorists in the same time pass on us and stand behind me and start shooting again. I get out from the window a little bit, go to turn to the terrorist and shoot them the 4 bullets they left in the gun, in the pistol. And when I want to drive to get down the handbrakes, I get a shot from my back arm. My bones is crushed from the heat. I have a damaged nerve. I put a full gas and drive away with another man with me. We get out from the road, and when I come to Baruch Hayl, it's a kibbutz near to Sderot. I saw another police car, and another policeman they was in the car, helped me and save us, and they called for the medics, and From there I go to Soroka, from Soroka to here, the first surgery. From the first surgery I go to Enkarem to the second and come back here to the
Rehabilitation.
And this is my story.
So those are the more positive stories we're going to hear tonight. After that part of the journey, we went to the World Zionist Organization headquarters. I really wasn't super familiar with World Zionist Organization. We got a wonderful tour, and a lot of the history of forming the State of Israel you can learn if you visit them. But Cantor Benny, I'm grateful because he connected us with this group, got us the access, and the chairman, who is pictured there, he was with us on the tour. So they're excellent people, and they're organizing more of these tours to get the story out. We were the prototype, but I really highly recommend doing this and hearing these, firsthand. So the next day we went to the south. We were supposed to go to Kibbutz Be'eri, but the IDF would not let us go because that site was too hot. So we went to Kfar Aza, a little bit north of there. You can see from the pictures, Kfar Aza is at its closest point less than a mile from Gaza. This is very close. The other, interesting fun fact is when I looked at Google Maps, it told me I was in Cairo. So we were in a war zone, and the IDF was jamming the GPS. You can see the entrance for Kfar Aza, and the next couple of clips are from one of the residents of Kfar Aza who met us to tell us what was happening.
Yeah, he will join us and we'll tell a little bit about the kibbutz, a little bit about what happened here on October 7th, and he will share with us stories about families in this kibbutz. So we really want to take you to the family house right there. So Hanan, please.
Morning. My name is Hanan, resident of Kfar Aza. Up until October 7th, I lived here with my wife, 2 children, 2 young children, a cat, relatively new residents of Kfar Aza. In the morning of the attack, I surprised everyone else, but I suppose you already know the story. The main point, 6:30 in the morning, we heard this barrage. We don't know where it's coming from. We realize thinking still it's a mistake, maybe something with Iron Dome went wrong. We're acquainted with the drill. We know what it's like to have rockets fight us all the time. So okay, it's one of these mornings. We'll bunker in our safe room and we'll stay there until it quiets down. But this seems a bit more than usual, so let's prepare for maybe an hour or two. Talking the lady who spoke before talked about these safe rooms. It's part of the normal landscape. I don't know if you've seen the kindergartens in Kfar Aza and the kibbutzim around, but they're basically these concrete bunkers that painted pastel colors to look pretty. That was our reality. That's our reality. There's a big skirmish every 2 or 3 months. A little bit bigger one every half year or year. It was getting more and more frequent. Then we have to leave the kibbutz for 48, 72 hours, but we kind of knew the rules. And between these day battles, life was wonderful. It was a great community, wonderful people. We as newcomers were really welcomed in. Everyone was smiling to us. Everyone we met was welcoming us in the most beautiful way. It was a very vibrant community until at the end of October. So we're in our bunker, and we all have crazy stories, but talking to friends in Kfar Aza, my story personally isn't that interesting. compared to other people that lost family members or had their house burnt on top of them, who were amidst battles. I was in the bunker with my family, with my parents. We were visiting 20 hours. Throughout the day, we get reports. Also externally, we're in the news. We knew what everyone else knew. We didn't know what's happening outside, not until we get like pictures of pickup trucks with machine guns and stilot. We start to grasp that something much bigger is happening. And our WhatsApp group, we started getting us information. Ophir, he was like the first one we got to notice that he was killed. Ophir Liebstein, another member, father of a child from my son's kindergarten. He was wounded. He died. Protecting the kibbutz. Started to come in that this is a lot bigger than we thought. And throughout the day, battles. I live in the other side of the kibbutz, relative to a new neighborhood that the terrorists didn't really get to until later in the day. And suddenly, like around 2 p.m., my neighbor who lives right in the corner of the kibbutz starts writing to us, listen, I feel someone's pulling on the lever of the mamad, of the safe room. Now, these rooms aren't lockable. They're not designed to be locked. They're designed to be open from the outside so rescue teams can rescue the people inside. So my neighbor, Guy, he's like holding the lever from the inside. He's like writing to us, someone please send forces. It's already late in the afternoon. And every 10 minutes or so, he's writing, look, someone's still pulling on the lever. Someone please help. Someone please help. And after 2 hours, he's writing, like, I can't hold the handle anymore. I can't hold the handle. I'm getting tired. Someone please send help. So luckily for them, it was a happy ending. Eventually, special forces did reach their house, and it was we heard it. I heard, like, this is how I know now how to differentiate between a Kalashnikov AK and an M16 by the sound. It's like crazy things you learn living around here. It's just so close. We're used to learning the sound of the UAVs and the helicopters and the rockets and the Iron Dome. Here's a new sound. It's really close. So they were rescued. Him, his wife, daughter, she was pregnant, gave birth. 1-month-old baby, but she's fine, she's safe. Yes, really good. I want to take you someplace I want to show you first. But there's like the regular route, but the more
So we're going to pick up where he's showing us, but I just want everybody, you see all of these pictures with all this stuff, it looks like graffiti. It's not really graffiti. When you see a C, it means the IDF went house by house and verified there's no terrorists there. When you see something that looks like a bullseye, it means, unfortunately, somebody is passed away in the house. The writing, there was just a concert for Zaka. Okay, those are the notes from Zaka when there are remains that aren't obvious what's there, so nobody disturbs them so they can get a proper burial. So let's hear the first.
Maybe it's a question. You hear her through like there's an old hen house through here, all sorts of old structures. They kind of navigated the way out towards the road, towards safety, for about 2 hours, and they're all severely burned until they eventually reached IDF forces. No one knew they were here. No one knew they were here until they reached on their own. And as soon as they were evacuated by helicopters, they all collapsed because of fatiguing with the burns, and they were immediately transported to Tel Shomer Hospital for burn clinic. They were all sedated, like many weeks. Like many of them, I think the mother only was woken up, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. The crazy thing is, this wasn't Hamas. When they tell the story of what happened here, this was looters. They came along, they tagged along with the Hamas, also Nukba fighters. They just came along, they saw all of the fancy house, they took whatever they could, they heard them from inside, until eventually they got, they took what they wanted, and they just, took one of these gas canisters, cooking gas, opened it and burned it on the family inside, and left. That's the looters.
Or civilians.
Yeah.
The poor civilians.
The civilians that
The
came
innocent
along.
civilians.
Innocent
That just tagged along for the party. That's what it was. There's no blemishing this. This is just what happens. They didn't have weapons. They didn't shoot them because they didn't have weapons. They said, oh, look, an open fence. You know? School day, let's go see what the Israelis have. And when they're done, burn the place down. That's it.
This is the view. We're about to get into a section of Kfar Aza where newlyweds, people who are leaving their parents' home for the first time lived.
It's like a younger generation neighborhood where become infamous. Most of the carnage happened. You will see momentarily the fence, the gate. There's a fence at the gate, leading to the Kfar Aza's fields are just behind us.
Gaza is there.
Yeah, Gaza's that direction.
How far?
What?
How far?
Gaza from here is about less than 2 kilometers. Less than 2 kilometers.
It's about 1 mile away.
A bit more than 1 mile.
6 kilometers away.
Yeah, depending where you measure from, but from fence to fence, and from inside it's about another 500, 600 meters inwards towards the first kinds of homes. But yeah, there's a agricultural gate which is used for the local farmers, and that was broken open. And a lot of Hamas forces just came into this neighborhood and had a field day. So complete destruction. Most of the people that lived here were young adults. Their first house outside of their parents' house. Students, 20, 23-year-old, 24-year-old young people.
And in the interest of time, I'm going to start moving a little bit quicker. This is what you look at when you turn left. This is a whole row of young people. It was the most devastating thing I've ever seen. Every single house. Every single house.
The apartment that Nitzan Lipstein was living in. ניצן ליפשטיין זה הבן של אופיר ליפשטיין. שניהם נרצחו. Both of them been murdered on October 7th. הוא נרצח כאן, בתוך הבית הזה. His son was murdered actually here. ואני מקווה שיהיה לנו הזדמנות לראות איפה אופיר נרצח. We hope to see the point where Ophir was being murdered. יש לנו אישור מיוחד. We have a confirmation. זה לא קורה כמו עם קבוצות. יש לנו אישור מיוחד מהמשפחה. We have from the family confirmation. להיכנס פנימה, לראות את כמות הכדורים. The amount of the bullets. לראות את דלת הממ"ד מחוררת בכדורים. To see the door of the safe door, how many holes you have inside. והכי חמור, וזה אפשר לראות מבחוץ, ששורפים למוות. You see, that is the war thing, that you see that they burned all the house. אז אני מבקש להיכנס בזהירות אחריי. Follow me carefully. זה מקום קטן. מי שרואה שיצא אחרי זה. It's small place, just get in and get out quickly outside.
And once you finish.
This is the inside. Now, when you think of what happened here, these were newlyweds. It was on fire. They were shooting the safe room door. You can see what it looks like. This doesn't have a happy ending. What you see in the ceiling, and that's a picture of the ceiling, and on the right is the safe room door. The husband decided the only way one of them was going to survive. He went out, he fell on a grenade, his wife left through the window. This is the son of the regional council, who also lives in Kfar Aza. That was the choice he has to make. You see the safe room door? Yeah. That's steel. Those are bullet holes through that door. That was his choice. Otherwise, they were both, you see how it was burning. It was on fire. They were going to die in there. He opened the door, and that was what he had to do. This next picture, there's no video here. This is the newly elected cultural manager's home. They thought they were missing. 2 weeks later, the remains were identified in the house. It's all burned. Zaka and the forensic experts were able to figure out their fate, but it took 2 weeks. The next story we're going to hear about Ofer Lipstein, and I'm sorry for the noise, but we were in a war zone.
חברים.
Who said, she said, I saw it.
Guys, it's a private property. Please keep respected. Quiet now. Just, Yaakov would like to speak. הבית הזה,
This house here,
הוא בית משפחת ליפשטיין.
you can see from your right side, it's Lipstein family.
פה גר החבר הטוב שלי, שהיה ראש המועצה האזורית שער הנגב.
The head of the council of regional nation of Negev was living here. He's a good friend. He was unfortunately a good friend.
אופיר ליפשטיין, היה איש של שלום.
Philip Weisberg was a peaceman.
אין שבוע שהוא לא פגש פלסטינאים.
There was no any week that he didn't a Palestinian delegation from Gaza.
ניסה להקים פה אזור תעשייה משותף.
He tried to establish here an industrial area here, together with the Palestinians.
וב-6:30 בבוקר,
On 6:30 a.m. in the morning on Saturday morning,
שהתחילה פה העניין,
when everything started,
הוא עזב את הבית
he left his house
עם האקדח שלו,
with his private pistol.
הוא רץ למחסן הנשק,
to the weapon
Armory.
armory.
ולקח נשק ארוך,
And he took a rifle
ונתקל במחבלים,
and he was heading toward a terrorist.
והנשק שלו היה לו מעצור בנשק.
When he was trying to shoot, he didn't shoot.
ואז המחבלים רצחו אותו.
And unfortunately the terrorists attacked and murdered him.
אני רוצה, אנחנו עוד רגע, יש פה עץ זית.
There is an olive tree just underneath
5 מטר מאיתנו.
5 meters from her.
אנחנו נגיע לשם עוד רגע.
I'm just gonna arrive there in a second.
שם הבן שלו.
There his son.
אחרי כמה שעות שהוא לא ענה לטלפונים.
After a few hours that he didn't respond to his phones.
הבן שלו יצא מהבית.
His son went out from his house when we just saw.
לחפש את אבא.
To search for his father.
והוא מצא אותו כאן ליד הבית.
And he actually found him here lying underneath the olive tree.
הוא חזר הביתה וסיפר לאמא ורד.
He came back and he told to his wife,
שאבא מת.
That dad is dying to his father. Yes.
אני דרך אגב, אני בשעה 11:30, 12 בצהריים,
Me personally at 11:12 a.m.
בבית הכנסת שלי בנתניה,
in my synagogue in Netanya,
חג,
it's a holiday.
הגיעו מידע,
We start to get information
ההרוג הראשון,
about the first person who died.
אופיר ליפשטיין.
And Philip Weisberg was the first one.
אופיר היה באמת איש מדהים.
Phil was an amazing person.
ואיש של שלום.
And a peaceman.
דרך אגב, כמו רוב התושבים כאן.
As by the way, most of the citizens who live in this Kfar Aza, the area generally.
והם, ולצערנו הוא נרצח כאן.
And unfortunately he been murdered here.
והוא נרצח בלוויה צבאית.
And he had
נקבר.
He was being buried in a military funeral.
וביום אתמול, כשהייתם בהיכל הזיכרון,
And yesterday when you had a chance to see the memorial hall in הר הרצל,
השם שלו היה אחד השמות החדשים שנמצאים שם על האבנים.
His name was one of the many names that were on the stones that we saw it.
כי הוא היה חלק מכיתת הכוננות.
Because he was part of the
rapid response team.
So, this is the olive tree where his son found him. And as you heard, he was a man of peace. He was working on an industrial zone to employ Gazans. Like, all of these people here were trying to restart the relationship with Gaza. They were very, very peaceful people. And, you know, this scene was sort of the last scene that we saw before we left. Their sukkah is still up. It was about to be Hanukkah. It's frozen in time, like a lot of these guys' lives. So we've moved on. Like nobody is living in Kfar Aza. There's no residents living there now. They've all been relocated. The person who was the resident giving the tour, he drove with IDF permission to meet with us. So as Ellie Cohanim said, we still have like hundreds of thousands of Israelis who aren't home during this war. I'm going to go a little bit quicker. The next town we visited was Ofakim. It's not a kibbutz. I would classify it as a working class city. It's about a 10-minute drive from the Gaza border. So just to think about how far these terrorists got in, it's a fair distance, almost like halfway from Beersheba. I'm sorry? It's how many? 30 kilometers from Gaza. Sorry, my hearing isn't so great. This is a hot link. If anybody wants it, one of the locals documented everything that happened there. It's all in Hebrew, but I can give you the hot link. Before we get into the videos, these are the safe rooms. Now, notice this community was largely built in the early 90s before so many rockets. So these safe rooms are not attached to the houses. They're like communal safe rooms. And Hamas showed up early there. So when the rockets fired, the residents had to go from the multifamily homes in here. They were waiting. Right? I mean, they got there early, and I'm going to let the residents tell the story.
Welcome to Ofakim. My name is Itzik. I was born here in Ofakim. I'm 55 years old. And I was your guy here. I speak English and Hebrew together, okay? So on Saturday, the Black Saturday, all the people here in Ofakim wake up with the sirenas. You know what the sirenas means?
Sirens.
Sirens and grad from Gaza. This is the regular to wake up with sirens. You know, Simchat Torah holiday, all of the people, most of them going to a synagogue. Because Ofakim, it's a religion city, traditional city, keeping our heritage, Jewish heritage from all of a country that people come from here, Morocco, Paris, Russia, Ethiopian, all of the people here. This neighborhood, maybe in 1990, the time that people comes from Russian to Israel and Ethiopian, build here most of the building, some of them wood house, and some of them like this. Most of the house here without a shelter. So people need to come out of the migunit. You can see it from the stage. And this day, this migunit is the problem because the people came out and the terrorists shoot them.
Because they didn't have shelters in their homes.
Yeah. So
That's right, in all houses, in all neighborhoods.
So we have three entrances to Ofakim in a 2-for-1 line road. One of them it's near Gaza, one of them it's a middle, and one of them another side. In the middle we have a police station that the terrorist wants with a map, we know it, to get to the police station, like in Sderot. I don't know why. Two terrorists with two vehicles, 16 terrorists, left, right in the first entry. and going on the road until we going to this building. We can see in far. You can see it. This building, people came out because the sirens and make him hide. How are you? You are a soldier. Because our dress is like a
army uniforms.
The terrorists look at this and shoot them. One of them is dead, and one of them is holding injured. Yes. So people now the hearing shooting, not sirens. It's change listening of the people. Some of them going to synagogue, some of them going to the shelter, or some of people have habit to came out to see the Kippat Barzel.
You're so used to it that you're getting out when there's siren.
And don't make attention that terrorist here. So, two group is split to the group. One of them here, and the next one, the next street, and show the people in the street and ירו בהם בעצם, shot them. On the first time, we don't have no army, no soldier. All of the people who have a gun in himself. Some of them soldiers, some of them from policemen, some of them מאבטחים, security guide in New York, and start to go to this this place. Roy Chaim, it's a soldier, but it don't have a gun because it's a regular.
When you're having vacation from they're taking the weapon. There are more chances that something going to happen at home instead of that you're having the weapon. That was the.
Israel has really tight control on guns more than any.
Much more gun control.
It's an IDF soldier,
soldiers go out,
but he's on vacation.
Go on vacation, they take the guns and they won't stay because there are many guns stealing.
More chances that the criminal will take his gun from his home. So that's the
most of the people don't understand until the end the area and the situation, because the people you cannot see all of the picture. So some of them still listening the siren, some of them still the shots, some of them don't hearing any noises. Yes.
Just in the interest of time, I'm going to move to the next.
Guys, please. We have here self-evident. Mark would like to share with us. Mark would like to share with us some words. Mark would like to share with us something. I'm going to say in Hebrew, and I'm going to translate. Mark, בבקשה, תספר קצת מה היה פה ב-7 לאוקטובר שאתה יודע, מה אתה חווית.
אני גר עם ההורים שלי.
Mark is living here with his parents.
באותו יום, ב-7 אוקטובר.
And the same day, October 7, on Saturday.
ב-6:30 אני שמעתי אזעקות.
6:30 a.m. as everyone hears sirens.
והאזעקות האלו היו לא כמו שהיו כאילו לפני זה, זה היו אורך זמן.
Seems to be unusual sirens. It was too long sirens. It went for a long time.
וההורים שלי היו מבוגרים, אני גם הייתי מטפל שלהם, גם הייתי עובד בתור נהג.
My parents are old, we're old, and I was treating them inside their house.
והם היו אנשים דתיים.
They were religious people.
הם רצו באותו יום ללכת לחג של שמחת תורה בבית
And
כנסת.
they want to go, makes sense, to the synagogue, to שמחת תורה in the synagogue.
קפצתי כאילו אחרי אחרי שהיו הזעקות האלו, אני פתאום שמעתי ירי.
After there were those sirens, I just started to hear also shooting.
יצאתי לכיוון החצר.
I went out toward the backyard.
וראיתי ששני אוטואים של טנדר.
And I started to see two cars, two vehicles.
באו חמאסניקים.
With terrorists on them.
עם בגדים שחורים.
Clothes, uniforms, and the green,
כן, ירוק.
and the green, which is the Nukhba symbol, with RPG in their hands, Kalach in their hands. Just can imagine that.
והם הוציאו את התיקים כאלו גדולים.
And took two bags, duffel bags.
שמו ככה על הרצפה, וכמו שלא
Put them on the land, like nothing happened.
התחילו כאילו להוציא את זה דברים שם.
To zip it out and to take some, you know, guns and everything from outside the bag.
ואוטו מהכביש כאילו הראשי.
From the main road,
נכנס כאילו
there
בכיוון
was
הזה.
a car that came toward from the city.
והנהג פשוט לא ראה, כאילו לא חשב שזה חמאסניקים, כאילו
And the
נסע ככה
driver
רגיל.
didn't realize, he just continued on with his driving.
פתאום אחד הוציא את
Suddenly one of
המחסנית,
them took
שם בנשק,
his weapons
ופתח אש.
and he just started to open with fire.
ובן אדם נכנס בתוך הקיר.
And this guy smashed to the car, smashed to the wall.
כן,
It was an Ethiopian woman.
וזהו כאילו.
שהיא באה מהמשמרת בעדי נגב, היא באה בעצם ממשמרת שהייתה
She just
מטפלת שם.
ended the shift. She was giving services and she came from a shift back home after she finished a night shift.
היא הייתה בעדי נגב, כמו אחות.
כל הסיפורים בסוף מתחברים.
אני ראיתי את זה, פחדתי.
I saw it in my eyes and I started to be scared.
התחלתי לרדת כאילו לחצר.
I started to go down toward the backyard.
אמרתי להורים שלי,
I told my
תצאו
parents,
מהר, תצאו
get
מהר.
out, get out, hurry.
כי יש פה מחבלים.
Because there are terror attacks. There are terrorists.
אבא שלי אמר כאילו,
My father
תקפוץ,
said, jump
תקפוץ ותפתח את המקלט
and
בינתיים,
open the shelter meanwhile,
כדי שאנשים יוכלו להיכנס בתוך
that people will
המקלט.
be able to get inside.
המקלט נמצא מחוץ לבתים למטה, הוא לא בתוך, הוא צריך לצאת החוצה.
As we say, it's an old neighborhood and the safe rooms are staying outside of the houses and people have to go to them.
ועוד פעם שמעתי ירי, ממש אינטנסיבי כזה,
And I heard
ירי
intensive
של
shooting,
5 דקות.
something like 5 minutes in a row.
זה היה ירי לשכנים שאמרתי לכם,
That
כן,
was
מהבלוק ההוא
the
שם.
shooting that were happening on parallel.
אנשים התחילו לצעוק ממש, כאילו
People
לצעוק.
started to scream
ואחד מחבל בא, נכנס בכיוון החנייה,
and one of the terrorists came to the parking.
יצא שכן שלי, פתח ככה את החלון, אמר, התחיל להגיד, כאילו, מה אתם עושים רעש? הוא לא ידע שזה מחבלים.
And one of them, just imagine that, one of the neighbors was
יפתח.
יפתח יחנגילו.
open his window and said, what are you doing noises?
והוא ראה את זה ישר נתן,
Just
כאילו,
right away shot him.
ראתה את האישה שלו מסכנה,
So the woman-
ראתה את זה, התחילה כאילו במדרגות לצעוק, יפתח, איגר, כאילו, אמבולנס, אמבולנס.
His wife saw it and she started to scream for MDA.
הוא שמע את זה, נכנס
heard it?
בתוך הבית,
Got inside the house
ופתח גם אש.
and shot.
עלה עד קומה שלישית, כן?
He climbed to the third
כן.
floor and
היא מסכנה גם נפלה,
killed
מתה.
her.
כן.
הורג אותה. And he
אחר
killed
כך
her.
עוד פעם אזעקות יהיו.
Again, now there was another set of sirens.
אני ראיתי הכל זה ממש בחצר, כאילו זה שניות,
I saw it in my eyes. Everything is within a second.
יצאתי החוצה,
went out.
אמרתי כאילו אבא מהר, כאילו
I
אמר,
took my father.
והם אמרו, אבא שלי אמר, לך ראשון,
My father said, go first
לך
of all,
ראשון, תפתח את המקלט,
open the
תעזור
shelter,
לאנשים,
and help the
אנחנו
people,
באים.
and we're going to come.
אני יצאתי, עוד לא היו בחנייה שם, מכיוון השלי, בחנייה, איפה שאנחנו נכנסים בכניסה של הבית, עוד לא היו שם את המחבלים,
When
רק
I
היו
came to my
מחבלים.
background, I didn't see yet any terrorists.
איך שאני נכנסתי, פתחתי את המקלט,
At the
ואנשים
minute-
נכנסו,
At the minute when I came to the shelter and I opened it and people started to get in,
וההורים שלי בזמן הזה יצאו ממש בכניסה של הבית.
and on the same time my parents were simultaneously were leaving this out of the house, leaving the house.
ובאו כאילו משני כיוונים, מחבלים,
And terrorists came from both directions,
והם פגשו פנים מול פנים,
and they met your parents,
כן.
and they met my parents face to face,
ופתחו אש לאמא ואבא.
and they killed both my father and my mother.
הוא ראה אותי,
He saw me.
אני ראיתי את זה ולא יכולתי כלום, כאילו בשניות, זה
I saw it
בשניות היו.
within a second. I saw it, and nothing that you can do.
ואיך שאני קפצתי במקלט, הוא
I
פתח
jumped,
אש.
I jumped inside the shelter, and he was shooting while he was shooting.
אני דרכתי על הזכוכית,
I actually was
ונפלתי
stepping
וקיבלתי
the
מכה.
glasses, and I hit my head back.
אבל כאילו, בגלל כאילו פחד,
But because of the fear,
אני כאילו קפצתי, כאילו
I
יצאתי על
jumped
הרגליים,
again on my foot,
וישר נכנסתי במקלט.
and went inside straight ahead to the
ואני האחרון שסגר את
and I
הדלת.
was actually the last person who actually closed the door.
והוא בא ממש כאילו, איך שאני כאילו סגרתי את המקלט, הוא בא עם הפנים שלו.
And he actually, I saw his face running toward me while I was locking the door.
יש שני דלתות.
כן.
יש אחד עם סורגים שאפשר לראות ואחד הדלת המסיבית.
כן, ובדלת המסיבית הוא התחיל להכניס את הקנה של הנשק.
And he was starting to push his gun toward me, toward there is two gates, and from the first one,
ואני פשוט עשיתי כאילו
and I
ממש
was
כאילו
able to lock it.
וסגרתי אותו.
And I closed it.
ובתוך המקלט כבר היו שם 10 נפשים.
Inside the shelter were there already 10 people.
והם התחילו כאילו לתת מכה בידית של
And
המקלט.
they were hitting the opening, like they tried to open the
התחילו
shelter.
לצעוק אללהו אכבר,
They were
אללהו
screaming Allah
אכבר.
Akbar, as it makes sense.
אתה החזקת מבפנים את
כן.
הדלת. היה אפשר לפתוח אותה מבחוץ? לא.
מבחוץ היה אפשר.
היה אפשר, אז אתה החזקת.
למעלה.
Actually, our friend here actually was holding and preventing from them to get inside to keep the 10 people.
והם באו עם הנשק איפה שיש צינור אוויר.
And there is in somewhere there is a
ventilation pipe. כן, כן. התחילו כאילו איפה שיוצאים את הכדורים, איפה שיוצאים כדורים, הם שמו ממש כאילו את הנשק והתחילו כאילו לעלות בחוץ, אבל עשן התחיל להיכנס בתוך המקלט.
So it was actually going outside, but the smoke got inside.
ואנחנו פשוט נחנקנו שם.
And they were
אני כאילו הורדתי את החולצה,
I took out my shirt.
כי אני הייתי פה בצבא,
And I was here in the
למדתי
army.
פשוט כאילו מתי שיש כאילו דברים כאלו, לעשות את ה... כאילו מים קצת, ולשים לשים ככה
I took my shirt and I put a little bit of water and I put it on my nose, just to be able to breathe.
והם היו שם 8.5 שעות, אנחנו היינו בתוך המקלט
And they
8.5 שעות.
8 hours and a half inside this shelter.
משטרה, אמבולנס, כיבוי האש, מתקשרים, לא
We
עונים.
were trying to call to any of the security services, no one was answering.
והם רצו לשים כבר רימונים בידית.
They wanted to put hand grenades on the door just to open it.
אבל מזל שלנו, שהחבר'ה האלו שנהרגים פה, הם באו להילחם איתם.
We had the thanks to those heroes that came to fight the people and they were holding them from getting to the shelter.
הם התחילו כאילו לקחת לעצמם את ה...
They actually took the fire for themselves.
אז אחר כך כאילו פה היה קרב.
There was a battle here.
באו עוד כאילו שוטרים, ואחר כך באו עוד את החיילים.
More soldiers that arrived.
ואחרי 8.5 שעות,
After 8 hours and a half,
באו חיילים, צה"ל אמרו, ביקשו מאנחנו
there were IDF soldiers that came to us
לפתוח את
and
לאט
they
לאט
were
מקלט.
asking them to open the shelter slowly.
היינו שם, מים חלודה הייתה שם, לא היה לנו מים לשתות.
They didn't have what to drink, of course.
אוכל, כלום, טלפונים, לא היו כבר עובדים, שום דבר. אנחנו כולם ככה, על הפנים, פשוט המצב שלנו היה על הפנים. איך שאני יצאתי עם החיילים, אני ראיתי גופות של אמא ואבא.
After 8 and a half, I saw my mom's and my dad's bodies.
חוץ מהם שהם הרגו אותם, עוד עם הסכין הם פתחו אותם. אבא וחצי פנים אמא לא היה.
They shot them and they cut them in half their faces with their knives.
ויש תמונות ויש לי כדורים, אני לקחתי חלקים של אמא ואבא, נתתי לעובדי זק"א, עזרתי להם פשוט.
Literally took parts of my mom and my dad and gave them to the LDA people.
So, I think these are a few stories. There's hundreds of stories like this. I'm gonna skip. You guys can all read about Rachel Edry. We were in her house. I'll just say this woman was so smart. After they cleared the house of terrorists, she was there for hours with them, right? Her son was in the police, told them to go on the top floor. After she exited, she asked, "How many did you kill?" They killed 4. She said there were 5. They had to go back in and kill the last one. But what I want to leave you with is there was such heroism in this town. Every point where somebody fell who was defending people, including that first person, Roe, who didn't have a gun. but he went with his brother defending the town. No gun. Every single one of these people in the town has a heroic story of defending the town. And if you want to know what people think, from Rachel Edry's home, this is the graffiti across. So it's a combination of Torah, but there is not going to be peace here for a long time after these stories. It's just, to me, an impossibility, right? And you can understand why the Israelis have to eliminate this. They had been conditioned to live with rockets for years, that it was a spectacle, they knew it. You heard from Kfar Aza where the guy said, all right, every 3 months, it's in the morning, right? You can't condition yourself to live like that because this is the outcome. But after this, we went to Gilead Junction, where they serve 20 to 30,000 soldiers a day. And what's amazing for this is a non-for-profit that didn't exist on October 6th. 5 business people got together. They started this thing. All the food's donated. All the labor's donated. And every single day, they're serving 20 to 30,000 soldiers. And what was the most incredible thing when we went there, the soldiers thanked us for being there. Can you imagine this? These are guys right next, they get a couple of hours to go from Gaza to refresh. They can do their laundry. They can get a massage. Chabad is there. They can put on tefillin, and they were putting on tefillin. But what a wonderful reaction. This isn't the army doing this. This isn't the government. This is private citizens doing this at a huge scale. This is the secret. This is the secret weapon. Here you see the pictures. The guy on the right is the chef. He had a catering business. As you can imagine, there's not a lot of catering going on. He's organizing feeding 20,000 people a day. And he's happy to do it. I call him the secret weapon. This is why Israel is going to win the war, because the people are behind it, and they're unified. Like, everybody's been to Israel here. Some people are Israelis. Have you ever been to Israel and not heard one complaint? I heard 0 complaints on this trip, 0. From anybody, and they have a lot to complain about. There are lots of things happening like this. Reuven can connect you, but there are lots of WhatsApp groups. If you want to smile, look at what's going on in these WhatsApp groups. There are huge numbers of people saying, I'm showing up, I'm going to be here, what can I do? They'll find things for you to do. Most of these WhatsApps are not official. They're like just general people doing good things, talking to kids from the kibbutzim, moving food to point A to point B. There are also more organized things to be doing, but there's a lot. The whole country is doing things like this. We also visited, the next day we were in the north. This is a factory run by Druze. All these people are Druze. They're doing 500 Sahal uniforms a day in the factory. As patriotic as you could possibly be. You can see the plaques. Some of the first people that fell in the war were Druze. They have the highest enlistment rate in the country. They, Rabbi Einsiedler will point out, these are descendants of Yitro, and left about 1000 CE. They were persecuted because they, did not conform. So this was a wonderful thing to see. We also visited the home of a bereaved family. I think we're running very late, so I'm not going to show the video. But I'll just say this family, their son was sacrificed. Very briefly, the day of the war, the day it started, he went to Kibbutz Be'eri. He drove. For 4 days, he was cleaning out terrorists in Kibbutz Be'eri. After that, into Gaza to rescue trapped soldiers from Golani Brigade, which is one of the toughest fighting groups in the IDF. And he was killed with shrapnel. He's got a 1.5-year-old son. His mother in the video, you can imagine, she cried the entire time. The father, he teaches Hebrew and teaches English. Very, very, they're with us, right? All of those people, they're making Sahal uniforms, right? We also visited later that day the Ramat Air Base, which was... Ramat David, which was unbelievable because it was an active air base. They were running missions that night. You know, what can I tell you? The people running the air base, ages 20 and 21, they're running the air base. One was the commander of the air base. The other person is planning the missions and also flying missions. So like some of the difficult questions were, well, you have all this stuff, how did it happen? And the answer was the IDF has some planes that are always ready to go. Always ready to go with people to fly. But when you're going to bomb something, you got to plan the mission. They didn't have pre-made plans for this war, right? Like he got into some of the complexities. You have to figure out what bombs to put on this base had F-16s. An F-16 can carry 4 one-ton bombs and 4 air-to-air missiles, but it can't land with 4 one-ton bombs. It can only land with 2. So you have to be careful, and not everything gets a 1-ton bomb. That's a big bomb. They showed us classified video of somebody asked, well, you don't have U.S. bunker busters. And they had this, Israeli confident smile. And he showed us a video of 5 IDF planes flying in close formation, each synchronized, dropping a payload, which is very similar to what a bunker buster does. So I didn't realize when these IDF guys fly, most of the time they're flying missions with multiple planes, very precise, dropping the ordnance at exact moments in time. It all has to be calculated. And he said, sometimes they're in the air and they can't execute the mission, but they have the 4 bombs and they can't land with them. They have to stay in the air until they identify new targets. And he confirmed there were many instances when they had targets that were ready to go that had high military value. And when they were there were too many civilians and they didn't do the mission. So he said, in every building in Gaza, they have a probability. How many civilians are there? What's the probability of casualties? All from intelligence, very good information. But he said it's intelligence. It's not always 100%. And when they have a human or a UAV over the target, they do change it. And every time they don't drop those bombs, the terrorists are still there, right? But that is the kind of war that they are, fighting. And as soon as we left, the sun was going down. We davened mincha right outside, and you could hear them taking off. So it was really a privilege to talk with these people. But this youth, think about the responsibility of 21. And, you know, Rabbi Schneier says it frequently. What are our 21-year-olds doing, right? They're trying to figure out what their major is. These guys are trying to figure out how many bombs, how many planes, whether they should drop them or not. They're making life or death decisions. And they admitted that there were problems, right? But, and those of you who've been following the politics know a bunch of IAF pilots, you know, during the political issues that preceded this, didn't show up. He said every single IAF pilot, they all were there. Like, there was no, they just knew what they had to do and everybody was there. But as Ellie Cohanim said, they don't have enough housing for all these people. If you're an IDF pilot, you need to live on the base. You can't live 5 miles away because you don't know when you're flying the mission. They're all like literally right outside. The last stop that day was we went to a recreation of the Nova Festival. So it was done by the organizers with all of the artifacts from the festival. And President Herzog was there. There were people, I don't know, we got in with WZO, but this event was really for families, friends of victims or participants at that event. It was the first night. And you can see some of the pictures. It was a music festival. There were tents, there was a bar, they were selling things. I mean, like, this was a music festival. These were peaceful people. But then when you look at these images, I mean, I'm telling you, this was like straight out of Yad Vashem. Seeing all these shoes, the glasses. This was a Holocaust. These people weren't fighters. There weren't even any IDF soldiers there. There were security guards and police. The toilets, you see the porta potties or whatever you want to call them, they have bullet holes in them. This was a horrible, horrible thing. These people went through a terrible ordeal, and the Israelis don't talk about it, but the survivors, they have a lot of problems that they're going to deal with for a long, long time. Some of them have taken their own lives already. It's not reported. It's not reported. Because if you're going to, I don't want to get into it, right? I went last week to see the video at the consulate. And I had seen a lot of horrible stuff on social media. This was really awful. Like, unbelievably awful. One of the journalists who was, one of the activists who was with us, she wrote an article, and the article was titled, "Cruelty Was the Point." This wasn't a war. They weren't trying to kill people and move on. They were dehumanizing people, and this is psychological warfare with the Jewish people. And every single person you will talk to in Israel knows somebody who was there, and I would probably guess to say everybody in this room probably is 1 degree separated from somebody who is directly impacted. The last day, we had the inside tour of IAI, who it's a military contractor, $7 billion in revenue. 75% of their revenues comes outside of Israel. They make satellites, they make missiles. You can see the pictures. We were in the room where they're building the current generation of communication satellites and surveillance satellites. So we asked them the question. I mean, it was the obvious question. Well, you have all of this stuff. You guys are good at it. Like, why didn't you see what was going on? And it was a very interesting engineering answer to the question. while there are a lot of satellites, they can't look at everything all the time. And even if they do look at everything, there's a limitation of how much data can be downloaded per unit of time. So they have the capability to image the entire Gaza Strip. It takes 5 minutes at a resolution of 30 centimeters, which is 1 foot. It takes 5 minutes. They can do it. He wouldn't give us the exact quotes, but multiple times per hour. The limiting step is they can't download all the data. And if they're doing that, they're not looking at Iran. The satellites weren't all focused on Gaza. So they need to be programmed where to look, but they have these really unbelievable capabilities. It's very challenging to launch satellites from Israel because you have to send them to the west, which is against the Earth's rotation. Most countries like the United States send them to the east. So it's very, very smart people here. So, but you know, if you look at the signs, these signs were all over the place, right? Every sign was one of unity. Every sign was one of unity. And, you know, the last day that I had, I went to the Kotel. It was the first night of Hanukkah. There were two interesting, I shouldn't say interesting, very emotional displays. They lit a menorah at the Kotel for every hostage still unaccounted for, and in the Rova they lit a menorah. It was happy because it was Hanukkah, but the country is still, it hasn't even begun to recover from this. I'm sorry? Every day a soldier dies. This is a tough process, and while we can move on, I mean, those sounds that we were hearing, the helicopters, the planes, the sirens, it's kind of nonstop there. Marty Grumman just came back. Same thing in Jerusalem, Erev Shabbos. That's when they send the welcoming, you know, gifts. But for me personally, I just felt like safer there. I felt that I didn't have to guard my words. I remembered what it was like to be in the majority. So the LL, while you're waiting in line, they're handing out like Hanukkah chocolates. You can see the LL signs. So I felt, for me, better connected, that we will win, but there's an awful lot to do, and there's a lot we can do. Ellie Cohanim talked about give. There's a huge financial need. There's no shortage of charities. I've highlighted a few that we encountered on the trip in the handouts outside, but you have to do more than just give. I mean, we're used to writing checks and then moving on to the next thing. It's not enough. Like, you saw 50-1 pro-Palestinian social media. And actually, when we're in the Kiryah, they told us the real statistic is like 10,000-1. So if you think like you have an extra 2 minutes in your day, get one of those WhatsApp things. It tells you who to call. Just make one call a day. It matters. It matters. Volunteer. The trip to Israel that you were going to put off, go. Go. Soldiers thanked us genuinely. And we weren't doing much other than being there, but they said, tell the story. They were glad that people were coming. They all had some relative here that they were asking, what's the situation like? But I think for Herzl's perspective, being in a country where it's the majority, like here, when these Hamas guys the student protesters from Hunter College, Hamas on campus, when they're walking around with the free Palestine, I don't feel like there's much I can do about that, right? I mean, I can write, I can do, but that isn't in Israel. You're understood there. There really is unity. There isn't a lot of why did Netanyahu do this? They'll get to that. I'm sure they'll get to that. Right now, they got to win the war. And I think our responsibility as the Jewish community is do whatever we can and double it, triple it, quadruple it. We need them to win, right? These other people, you saw the videos. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a military exercise. There were three people. There was the Nukba guys, there was the regular Hamas, and then there was the citizens, right? The best trained guys went to the police stations, to the military. The average Hamas guys terrorized people systematically. And then they let in the innocent people who burned our brothers and sisters in their homes. They had already taken everything. They opened gas canisters, lit it on fire with families in there for what? They already took what they needed, right? This is what we're dealing with. So, you know, some of these charities like this A-Team, these are the guys that are running Gilad Junction. I even got the U.S. tax information for you guys. Open Doors is providing housing. Okay, everybody who's been to a hotel, it's like nice for a week or two. Imagine living in a hotel for, it's almost 3 months. Hadassah, everybody knows. Zaka, you guys heard about at the concert. These Nova people, they are going to need a lot of social care to somehow put their lives together, the survivors. So I would, and then all of these kibbutzim, like this was the different Ofakim versus the kibbutzim. Ofakim, they're living there. Like there are residents there. The kibbutzim, you can't live. There's no way to live in these places. They all have to be rebuilt. The security has to be there. Some are thinking about relocating. But yet, it's a community living in the Dead Sea, living in some hotel in Jerusalem. Where were they working? Were they in a factory? Are they going to work in a factory in the Dead Sea when they were doing agriculture or audiovisual? I mean, there's 300,000 lives. Even if you didn't lose somebody and you watched it, your life is not normal. You have kids that got to go to school. So I think it's, super really important that we step it up as a community. Whatever you've done, this is a generous community. People give their time, they give their money. Ellie Cohanim said it very well. Do more. Do the max. This is the time to do the max. Whatever you can do, go, give, donate your time. I know we've gone over. Reuven, do you want to say anything? Concluding. Yeah, I think we can do Kaddish for these victims and Hatikva, and I have a video doing that. But if you want to do any closing remarks,
just a quick closing. First of all, Rabbi Schneier, wanted to be here very badly. I apologize that he couldn't be here. I want to acknowledge Rabbi Flato is here. To reinforce what Phil said, I left here depressed. I don't want to say I was happy when I was there, but I'm depressed again because when you go there, things sort of get reinforced. And one of them is the negative, one is the positive, that you're here and you're making a big deal about what's happening in Harvard or in Penn or in Hunter, and these things are very important to us and they're major issues. But then you go there and you go to Kfar Aza or you go to Ofakim and you sort of say, wait a minute, I really care what Claudine Gay says, or I really care what McGill says at Penn. It really puts things in very big, in perspective of really, you can say the little problems we have over here. And at the same side, you feel much stronger there. I mean, whatever happens here, you know, we rely on the ADL or we beg the NYPD, come and help us, you're not doing enough. And then when we were there, we were with 30,000 soldiers, and we literally sat inside an F-16, and then we're watching the satellites, and they're talking about space war, and you just feel so much, you know, stronger, and it reinforces your love for Israel, and you do understand that it's a place, a haven, that I think, too many times take for granted. And, you know, finally, I just want to say, you know, there is going to be, as they say, an accounting in the end. First, we have to win the war, but we have to also sometimes see what happened. And we always say, what was the reason for it? And we asked the defense minister, Bogie Ya'alon, who was the defense minister, and he was the head of military intelligence, actually, and he spoke about the Yom Kippur War. And he said the General Zeri, who was later on during the commission, really blamed for it, because the difference in the Yom Kippur War now was Yom Kippur War, they had the information and they didn't do anything about it, and here they didn't really have any information, they didn't know it was coming. And when he became the head of the intelligence, Bogie Ya'alon, he took his seat from the front of the table to the middle, because he said during the Yom Kippur War, the head of intelligence made himself the head of the table, and he didn't listen to what other people said, and it was hubris. And he blamed everything on arrogance. He said, you know, the technology is one thing, who was in Southern Command is another thing, but he sort of blamed a little bit on arrogance, that we sort of forgot that we live in a very dangerous neighborhood in Israel, and we don't live in Kansas anymore, and our neighbors are not Minnesota, and they're not Iowa. So that's one point I really want to make. But the last point is that on that Friday night, the view that we were looking down on was the Knesset. And if you look at just 2 months ago, the Knesset was very lively. And it was a place where they were negotiating the budget. And it was a place that they were trying to change legislation, specifically the judicial reform. And when we looked at it, even though it was Friday night, you can sense that it was sort of silent, which it has been for the past 2 months. Because outside of really 5 or 6 Knesset members who are now in the war cabinet, nothing's going on. No legislation, no budget. It's really like twilight. It was a very, very dark place, probably the darkest in Israel's history, before this war. There was fighting in the streets. We all remember 500,000 people on one side, a few 100,000 the other on that judicial reform. And we were warned. We said, sinas chinam, hate between two Jews, it's going to lead to bad things. Now, I'm not saying that led to this, but we have to remember the way we were fighting. And now we looked at that Knesset, and we look at it today, and it's twilight. It's not dark, and it's not light. It's just sort of in the middle. And when I left there, I really said to myself, it better come back to be the light. And that's my fear, is how quick the country might forget that. Phil said it so well. They're not complaining now, and there's an incredible achdus there. I've never seen anything like it in my life, but with that, I have a little trepidation about how quickly we can go back, and Israel can go back to their old ways. And that's, you know, sort of the Hanukkah message of the light, that we remain with that achdus. So with that, I think it would be good for Phil. And I just want a big round of applause for Phil. He's getting the Oscar this year as the Academy Award, because I've never seen it. I think everyone would agree this was spectacular.
I don't know how to edit video. I'm sorry it took more time, but could I ask everybody, this person is Yaakov Agoel. He's the chairman of Hatikva, and I think he's going to recite Kaddish for Phil Lipstein. I think we should do that after we're going to do Q&A. So just because we have some people on the video, maybe there's one or two who are hardy souls still here. I think we're going to recite Kaddish with over these are Kedoshim in our generation, right? Their crime, they were born Jews. That's it. And then Hatikva, and then I can stay as long as people, you know, want to talk.
Ophir and the others who've been slaughtered and murdered here. ובסיום אנחנו נשיר כולנו בגאווה את התקווה. And then we're going to sing together, all of us, we're going to sing the Tikva proudly. Yes. גדל ויתקדש שמי יובח.
למען יברך שרותיה ועמית מלכותיה, וחי תפרני וקראי משיחי. וחי כל יום וכל וחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלל זמן קריב ואמרו אמן.
אמן. יש שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולם היה.
ברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ותדל כלה ותלה שמי, ותקושב בריחו. אלא מכל ברכתה, שירתה, תשבחתה, נחמתה, דאמירה ועלמה ואמרו אמן. יש אל אמר רב משמעיה חיים ושרה וישועה נחמה וזרה ופועה וגאולה וסליחה וכפרה ורווח והצלה. לנו כל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו וברחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
התקווה.
קולות בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומיה, ולפתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה. עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
So I'm happy to take questions if there are questions. Yeah.